Whether or not you've experienced intimate partner violence or child abuse personally, the current statistics indicate that there are people in your life that have. Violence can have long-lasting, devastating effects. Survivors of violence and abuse carry the emotional scars long after they are out of harm's way. And perpetrators of abuse can escalate the violence until they and their victims lose everything: family, career, self-respect, and even their freedom. The Department of Defense is committed to addressing and ending domestic violence. At DLA, the Family Advocacy Program, a DoD-sanctioned program, is designed to prevent, identify, report, and provide treatment and options to families that have experienced domestic violence or child abuse. My name is Nicole Schwartz, and I work as a contractor in the Family Services section of Family and Morale, Wellness, and Recreation at the Defense Distribution Center Susquehanna in New Cumberland, Pennsylvania. Providing support and assistance to the Family Advocacy Program is the focus of my work with DLA. This webinar is intended to provide information on the Family Advocacy Program and our organization at the Defense Distribution Center Susquehanna. The primary mission of the program is the prevention, identification, and treatment of child abuse and domestic violence within the military community. We are a command support program with the purpose of preventing child abuse and domestic violence, protecting the victims of abuse, coordinating treatment for all those affected, ensuring installation personnel are effectively trained to intervene in child and intimate partner violence, to promote public awareness of child abuse and domestic violence within the installation community, and coordinating professional intervention at all levels within the civilian and military communities. That's the mission and the work of the Family Advocacy Program. The Department of Defense is specific about what it considers domestic violence and child abuse, and under what circumstances FAP will get involved. It defines domestic violence or domestic abuse as violence or a pattern of behavior resulting in emotional or psychological abuse, economic control, or interference with the personal liberty directed toward a current or former spouse, a person with whom the abuser has a child, or a current or former intimate partner with whom the abuser shares or has shared a common domicile. Child abuse and neglect are defined as injury, maltreatment, or neglect to a child that harms or threatens the child's welfare. The Family Advocacy Program will get involved when one of the parties is a military member, or in some cases, a Department of Defense civilian serving in an overseas installation. The Family Advocacy Program provides a number of services: prevention, victim advocacy, education and training, assessment and treatment. This slide is split into two different columns. The column on the left indicates the services that are provided by the Family Advocacy Program and the Family Advocacy Program Manager on Defense Distribution Susquehanna at DLA in New Cumberland. The FAP program and the FAP-M, led by the FAP-M, provides prevention, education programming, information and referrals, and public awareness campaigns and observances. You've likely seen some of the documentation for Greet and Share at the Child and Youth Program building, or the monthly webinars, or the 5K or other awareness campaigns and observances throughout the installation. This is part of an overall prevention education program that we provide. Victim advocacy is another service. Immediate response or crisis intervention, the coordination of treatment for all those who are affected by abuse, and the coordination of additional services and professional intervention at all levels. Victim advocacy is another service that's provided to individuals who suffer at the hands of their intimate partner or a parent at Defense Distribution Susquehanna. And education and training. Our role is to ensure that installation personnel are effectively trained to intervene in child abuse and interpersonal violence. The other side of the slide, including assessment and treatment, are services that are offered to individuals through the Family Advocacy Program, but the services themselves are provided by Dunham Medical Clinic in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. The Family Advocacy Clinician at Carlisle, at Dunham Behavioral Health, provides professional clinical assessment services and also sits on the monthly meeting of a case review committee to determine if the reports meet the criteria for abuse, meet the accepted definition of abuse. And also, the FAP clinician is assigned to serve the individual or the family, and services are currently provided by the FAP clinician at the Dunham U.S. Army Medical Clinic at Carlisle Barracks. So this is an overview of the services, the full scope of services that are available under the DoD FAP program. This slide is an indication of what factors contribute to abuse, and it's one that I wanted to include in this webinar to help explain that abuse is a complex issue, not a single situational issue. And it shouldn't be attributed to a character defect or personal issue for the perpetrator or the family. So helping to cultivate a deeper understanding of challenges that puts family at risk for incidents of violence and some of the more long-term patterns of abuse will assist in your ability to identify families who are at risk and to refer them for services. So I included this slide so that it could help identify some of the individual risk factors and protective factors, the family risk factors, the community risk factors, and the societal risk factors. Because abuse, and you will see some language on this slide that is specific to families, but abuse in general is a very complex issue, and it's not it's not usually a single incident, and it's not a single issue. So let's turn our attention to and talk a bit about domestic violence. This often occurs in the context where there is a pattern of assaultive and controlling behavior. It may include physical, emotional, psychological, or it may be sexual in nature. It can include threats of harm to children or other family members, pets, and property. In above and beyond threats, it can also include the use of violence against those people or pets as a method of manipulation as well. The violence is used to intimidate, humiliate, or frighten victims, or to make them feel helpless or powerless. This can be a single act, but it most commonly is a number of acts. But it could begin as a minor, it might appear to be a minor issue in the beginning and viewed in isolation, but collectively forms a pattern and amount of abuse. This slide depicts the cycle of abuse. Abuse can be a single incident event, but most often it's a pattern of behavior. The cycle of abuse was terminology that was coined by Lenore Walker in her 1979 research on domestic violence. It includes 3 phases, including tension building, acting out, and reconciliation or honeymoon, and calm. This concept can be useful in conceptualizing abusive dynamics. Subsequent research is built on the foundation that was provided by Walker's research and has further expanded the original cycle. So you'll see that the graphic in front of you includes more than her initial concept. This cycle usually goes in the following order and will repeat until the conflict is stopped, usually by the survivor entirely abandoning the relationship or some type of professional intervention. The cycle can occur hundreds of times in an abusive relationship, and the total cycle can take anywhere from a few hours to a year or more to complete. However, the length of cycle usually diminishes over time, so the reconciliation and the calm stages can disappear, and violence becomes more intense and the cycle becomes more frequent. The first is tension building. Stress builds from the pressure of daily life. For example, parental stress, stress over children, marital issues, misunderstandings, or other family conflicts. During the tension building, the abuser can feel ignored, threatened, or annoyed, or even wronged. The feeling lasts on average several minutes to hours, but it may last as long as several months with those deep-seated, building, tense feelings. To prevent violence, the victim may try to reduce the tension by becoming compliant, or nurturing, or offering favors, or to get the abuse over with, prepare for the violence or lessen the degree of injury, the victim might provoke the batterer. The second is an acute violence or an outburst. This is characterized by outbursts of violence, abusive incidents which may be preceded by verbal or psychological abuse. And during this stage, the abuser attempts to dominate his or her partner with the use of domestic violence. So this is the act of violence, or the acts of violence. The reconciliation and honeymoon and calm phase. The perpetrator may begin to feel remorse, guilt, fear that their partner will leave or call the police, and the victim often feels pain, fear, humiliation, disrespect, confusion, and may mistakenly feel responsible for the violent act. The stage is characterized by affection, apology, or alternatively completely ignoring the incident even occurred. This phase marks an apparent end to the violence, with assurances that it'll never happen again or that the abuser will do his or her best to change. Sometimes there's promises of therapy. During this stage, the abuser may feel or claim to feel overwhelming remorse or sadness. The relationship is relatively calm and peaceful during this time. During this period, the abuser may agree to engage in counseling, ask for forgiveness, or create a normal atmosphere. In intimate partner relationships, the perpetrator may buy presents or the couple may engage in passionate sex. Over time, the batterer's apologies and requests for forgiveness become less sincere and are generally stated to prevent separation or intervention. However, interpersonal difficulties will inevitably arise, as they do in most relationships, leading again to a tension-building phase. The effect of the continual cycle may include loss of love, contempt, distress, physical disability. Intimate partners may separate, divorce, or at the extreme, someone may be killed. Child abuse is one of our nation's most serious public health problems. It occurs at every socioeconomic level, within all ethnic groups, cultures, and religions, and at all levels of education. And each day in the United States, 4 children die as a result of child abuse. And 3 out of 4 of these victims are under the age of 4. Scientific studies show a link between child abuse and neglect of children and a wide range of medical, emotional, and behavioral disorders. Child abuse and neglect are defined as injury, maltreatment, or neglect to a child that harms or threatens the child's welfare. And it can include physical abuse, which is an injury resulting from intentional or unintentional physical aggression. Even if the injury was not intended, the act is considered physical abuse. Some examples include beating, slapping, hitting, shaking, pushing, kicking, being hit by something that was thrown in anger, or severe physical punishment that results in visible bruising. It can also include sexual abuse, which is any sexual act between an adult and a child, which includes penetration, intercourse, incest, rape, oral sex, or sodomy. Other examples include fondling, violations of bodily privacy, such as forcing a child to undress or spying on a child in the bathroom or bedroom, exposing the child to adult sexuality, such as performing sexual acts in front of a child, exposing genitals, telling inappropriate sexually based jokes, showing pornography to a child, and also commercial exploitation, which is sexual exploitation through child prostitution or child pornography. Child abuse can also include emotional abuse, which is any attitude, behavior, or failure to act that interferes with the child's mental health or social development. It can range from a simple verbal insult to an extreme form of punishment. Emotional abuse is almost always present when another form of abuse is found. Surprisingly, emotional abuse can have more long-lasting negative psychiatric effects than either physical or sexual abuse. And finally, neglect. This is a pattern. It's a pattern of failing to provide for a child's basic needs, such as physical, education, or emotional neglect. So, some information on reporting domestic violence and child abuse on the installation. The DLA police are the reporting point of contact for incidents of domestic violence that occur on the installation. If you or someone you know is the victim of domestic violence, you may make a report to the police, Family Advocacy Program manager, or a member of the military healthcare system. The DLA police are the reporting point of contact for incidents of child abuse that occur on the installation as well. The SOP for the installation directs that police and the FAP-M, which is the Family Advocacy Program manager, to work collaboratively to serve victims of child abuse. There are many mandated reporters within DLA. The Pennsylvania law and DLA policy require that a mandated reporter with a reasonable suspicion of abuse or neglect must immediately make a report to Childline. In a reasonable suspicion, that's in quotes, it's legal terminology. It may be based on something that the child tells you, or a report by someone else, or your own observations, or one or more of the signs of abuse contained in the presentation. The role of a mandated reporter is to report the suspicion of abuse. The role of Childline is to assign someone to actually investigate whether abuse is occurring. When in doubt, DLA employees are encouraged to act conservatively and make a report. The Case Review Committee is the multidisciplinary team of professionals that reviews cases of military child abuse and domestic violence. The purpose is to coordinate medical, legal, law enforcement, and social service assessment, identification, investigation, and treatment function, and a command intervention from the initial report of spouse or child abuse to case closure. The CRC is composed of a multidisciplinary team of professionals that are trained to assess reports or allegations of abuse, and it's supervised by the Military Treatment Facility Commander. So you see on this slide the committee members and who makes up the committee. The Case Review Committee, or the CRC, meets monthly. They review reported cases and make a determination what meets or does not meet the criteria of abuse under the Department of Defense's language and criteria. The CRC also makes treatment recommendations, but not disciplinary action. Command handles all administrative and disciplinary action. This is resources for you. The Installation Victim Advocate, or the Family Advocacy Program Manager, can be reached at 717-770-7066. The 24-hour victim advocate in Harrisburg at the Harrisburg YWCA can be found at this number. And also Access York's 24-hour hotline for domestic violence is listed as well. These are resources that we hope to help that may help you make a choice about reporting incidents of domestic violence. And again, on the installation, the DLA dispatch is the reporting point of contact. Thank you for viewing the Family Advocacy Program's webinar. We appreciate your time and attention. If you have any additional questions regarding FAP, you seek referrals for programs or services, or would like to know more about our mission, please feel free to reach out to the Family Advocacy Program Manager at 717-770-7066. Thank you for joining me.